Hey guys, it's Tim. For my current issues paper, I decided to tackle the topic of transgender students and the impact that could have on school districts. I felt that we, as potential future administrators, could potentially have to deal with this someday. So it was an important topic for us to take a look at. The issue of transgender and/or gender identity in Maine is a fairly contemporary issue, as I said, and it's something that I think the policymakers and school officials, if they haven't already, really need to take a look at to familiarize themselves with. It's only been since 2005 that the voters of the state agreed by a referendum to keep in place a law which was passed by the legislature, LD 1196, titled An Act to extend civil rights protection to all people regardless of sexual orientation. And when that law went into effect of December 2005, they defined sexual orientation, but they also defined sexual identity and gender identity and gender expression, and made sure that individuals could not be discriminated against, and that their explicit protection was protected under the law. So since that's been done, back 10 years ago, much has been done to help clarify what rights individuals have, because not everything was written perfectly in that law in 2005, so there's been a lot of questions. In September of 2007, the Maine Human Rights Commission adopted some amendments. They included beyond the definitions and what they wanted to lay out originally to make sure discrimination didn't happen. They went a step further and made sure that under employment and housing that they included gender expression and gender identity. They said the only reason that you could potentially deny a person employment or housing would be if you could prove that it imposed an undue hardship on your conduct of business, and even then it would still have to be questioned. So for us, let's start to take a look at some recent local cases that have made national headlines. And the first one I want to talk about was right in Orono, Maine. Just in January 2014, the Supreme Court of the state handed down their verdict on a landmark case titled John Doe versus RSU 26. And the decision, which is believed to be the first of its kind, favored a student by the name of Nicole Maines, who was titled Susan Doe in the case. Her dad is John Doe, and it claimed that the Orono school officials had violated the anti-discrimination laws when they would not allow this transgender fifth grader to use the female bathroom. What the deal with that was, a little bit of history on it, was going back as early as the age of 4. The student Nicole Maines, again identified as Susan Doe, had identified herself as a female, even though she was born a male at birth, and that's what was listed on her birth certificate. But by the time she was in the 3rd grade, she was wearing gender-neutral clothes, and by the time she was in 4th grade, the student, who again they identified as Susan, but her name is Nicole, was dressing exclusively as a female. She started using the female bathrooms after a 504 meeting, and there was not an issue whatsoever at the school. There were single-stall bathrooms, so it's not like she was in there with other students, and it honestly just didn't cause that many problems for the school district until she decided to go to grade 5, at which time she switched schools and went to the Asa Adams school, and at that school they did not have separate single-stall bathrooms. There was multiple stalls all in one bathroom. And what happened there was the grandfather of a 5th grade boy decided to have her challenge, or decided to challenge whether Nicole should be using the same bathroom. And so he sent his grandson in there not once but twice. And it created so many issues that the school decided to tell Nicole that she could not use the bathroom, that was the girls' bathroom. And so her parents decided to sue. In the end, the Maines family won, and they were awarded $75,000 in damages. And it was a case that set the precedent for the state of Maine. The issue is, though, no federal courts have really taken up on the issue, and so each state has had to kind of look at things individually. So for the state of Maine, this case set the precedent. For other states, though, they're still kind of working through this. Another case that I took a look at in my paper was titled Student versus Arcadia Unified School District. And it involved a female to male transgender student. So last one was a male to female. This is a female to male. And this was in San Gabriel, California. And what happened is the student was told that they would have to change in the nurse's office, as well as room alone on any field trips. And so there was questions brought about this. The parents felt like you were singling him out for different treatment than his male peers. And it said, moreover, the district, needs to really take a look at this. And in the end, what happened is the district was required to have to revise their policies, and that set the precedent again for the state of California, much like the John Doe case did for the state of Maine. Also in the state of Michigan, a family of a 14-year-old Michigan boy they called Max recently won a lawsuit against 4 separate school districts in the greater Detroit area for failing to provide a safe educational environment for their female-to-male transgender child. And as this says, the suit alleged that the principal at one of the schools allegedly dismissed Max's trouble with his peers with statements like, well, if he's going to dress like a boy, then he needs to toughen up. And one of his health teachers in one of the other schools is alleged to have questioned Max about his sexuality in front of a whole group of kids. And so that was something where an agreement was reached out of court. No precedent was set there because it was reached out of court. But again, this case at least went in favor of the transgender student. Not all cases, though, have gone that way. The Maine's case did, the student case did, the Max case did. But there are many that are different. First, a few statistics. According to the National Center for Transgender Equality, 78% of 1,846 transgender K-12 students in a 2011 survey reported that they were harassed on a regular basis. 1/3 of the respondents reported physical violence, 12% reported even sexual violence. 6% said that they'd been expelled for expressing their gender or their identity. And the same poll showed that 91% of parents of transgender students believe that overall the nation's school systems are doing an unsatisfactory job of providing adequate educational environments for their transgender students. An example of that might be in March of 2015, just a few months ago in Stafford County, Virginia, the board of directors voted to adopt a new policy that would require that all of their transgender students use either the bathroom that corresponds with the gender that they identified with at their birth or the staff bathroom. And as we saw in the Arcadia case, and as well as the case here in the state of Maine, our states have ruled on that, and they would say that what Virginia is doing, if that same precedent or same case were to take place here, they would say, no, you do not have to force a student to do that. But the state of Virginia, that's what they've determined, and since there are no federal laws on it, then that's what you do in the state of Virginia. Another case, a couple cases that have gone maybe against the transgender students, or definitely against transgender students, would be at the collegiate level. There are 3 Christian schools, George Fox University, Simpson University, Spring Arbor University, that were all recently granted exemptions that they could deny access to transgender students based on the fact that they were Christian schools. And this comes just weeks after the Education Department's assertion in April of 2015 that the gender equality law under Title IX bars schools that receive any federal funds from discriminating against transgender and gender non-conforming students. And all schools receiving any federal funds, including public loans and Pell Grants, are required to follow Title IX. And that includes those Christian schools. Even though they're private schools, they receive some public money. And so exemptions were granted to those 3 schools, and so they can deny students based solely on their gender identity. But by and large, things have been trending in a more positive direction as far as the LGBT community is concerned. California became the first state to enshrine certain rights for transgender K-12 students in a state law. That was back in 2013, so that was before what happened here in Maine. And it requires all public schools in the state to allow their students access to whichever restroom or locker room that they choose. Upon signing the bill, Governor Jerry Brown announced that it will also allow transgender students to choose whether they want to play boys or girls sports. And the new law gives students the right to participate in sex-segregated programs, activities, and facilities based on their self-perception and regardless of their birth gender. So, and one more, I guess I'll add, Just here within the past week and a half, the New York State Department of Education released guidelines on how their school districts would accommodate transgender students. And those guidelines said that the school should use pronouns that the students prefer and encourage the administrators to be receptive of gender identities of young people. And so I think, again, the LGBT community would say that that's definitely a step in a positive direction. So as you can see, the issue of transgender students and their rights is an ever-evolving issue. And while the majority of the laws and policies being put into place do favor transgender students and their rights, there are other measures being put into place in other parts of the country to combat these recent trends. And it's certainly a delicate issue, and one that I believe is certain all school districts at some point will probably have to face, and so they should immediately begin addressing the implementation and reviewing their policies, even if they don't knowingly have any transgender students in their district, because I think history would tell us that it'd probably be better that they get out in front of this than it would be to left answering the questions once the issue has become too serious. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on my paper. I apologize for it being too long, and hopefully you've learned a little bit about it. Thanks.